Now that I think you figured out all the cells, let's start with photosynthesis and what exactly happens. So the overview reaction for what happens in photosynthesis is plants are going to take sunlight, combine it with carbon dioxide, which is the gas you breathe out, and water. Okay, so sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water. And during photosynthesis, they're going to turn that carbon that's in carbon dioxide into sugar, okay? That's how plants make food. So sugar in the form of glucose is C6H12O6. And then a byproduct of that is oxygen gas, which plants give off and then we inhale, okay? So sunlight plus CO2 plus water yields sugar in the form of glucose and oxygen. And these numbers in front just balance the equation, okay? So that you've got equal numbers of everything everywhere else. Okay, so photosynthesis, which is going to take place in the chloroplast, which is an organelle in the plant cells, specifically the mesophyll cells. So it's divided up into the light-dependent reactions, which I'm just going to call the light reactions, and then the light-independent reactions, which I'm just going to call the dark reactions, but they're also called the Calvin cycle. Okay, so they're divided up. Okay, so the light reactions take place in the chloroplast in those little thylakoid discs. You know how they were stacked up like that? And when they're in a stack, it's called the granum, okay? And each little reaction takes place in the membrane of one of these little discs. The dark reactions take place in the stroma, which is the liquidy part inside. That doesn't look like stroma. That's the liquidy part inside the chloroplast, okay? So in my book, like, there's the chloroplast, right? This is the overview. That's just like your picture, I think. So there are the light reactions in the thylakoid. There's the Calvin cycle over here in the liquidy part. This whole thing is a chloroplast. And every plant cell has like a bunch of those, okay? And then here's the light coming in, water through the stomata, remember the stomata, and carbon dioxide through the stomata. They're coming into the cell to help this process happen. Okay, now the light reactions, I don't have the same picture as you, but the light reactions do involve a complex process that is sort of summarized in this picture, but yours had way more detail because it actually showed the photosystems. Mine show photosystems, but they just put photosystem 2 and then photosystem 1. So what is this thing right here? This is the thylakoid, okay? That's where the light-dependent reactions are going to take place, okay? It's the little green disc. And notice these red things embedded in the membrane. Those are proteins, okay? And the proteins are going to be there for this little electron to bounce around, okay? An electron is just a negatively charged subatomic particle. It's a negatively charged particle, but it can gain energy, okay? And what makes the electron gain energy is sunlight. So this little arrow coming down is sunlight. That's energy. So the plant is going to capture energy, okay, in the form of the sunlight and transfer that energy to this particle, to this electron particle, okay? So how does it absorb the sunlight? It absorbs it through the photosystems, which contain pigment molecules, and the pigments are called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll. So I'm going to write this down. Chlorophyll is a pigment that absorbs light. Okay, so the chlorophyll is the pigment that absorbs light. Where is the chlorophyll? In photosystem 2 and photosystem 1. So he might not have gone into detail about why there's 2 photosystems and why 2 is before 1, which kind of is stupid, but there's a reason, but I'm not going to get into it. Okay, so in the photosystems, you have the pigment molecules, chlorophyll, that absorb the sunlight from those light rays that are coming in, okay? That energy goes where? It goes to the electron, okay? The little blue electron, and it's picking up energy as it goes, okay? So sunlight's getting absorbed, it's bouncing around, and it's transferred to this electron, okay? Now, so then it's going to go from like to this protein, to this protein, to this protein, and as it's going, look what happens. These hydrogen ions are getting pumped into the thylakoid, okay? The hydrogen ions are getting pumped into the thylakoid, okay? That's really important because in just a minute, all the hydrogen ions that got pumped inside in the middle, they're going to come back out through this special protein called ATP synthase, okay? And when that hydrogen passes through that channel, look what happens. ATP is formed. ATP is an energy molecule. I hope you've already talked about what ATP is. But you have got to have that energy in order to make the sugar that we talked about at the very beginning, okay? So this is just step 1. So step 1, the light-dependent reactions, is going to be capturing the sunlight through the photosystems, pumping hydrogen ions so that you can make ATP. Okay, so you're going to make some energy. And the energy will be used in the light-independent reactions or the Calvin cycle to make sugar. Now, this is a special protein, and it's called NADP reductase, and it's sort of like an enzyme. And what it does is it picks up these electrons after they've gone from protein to protein through the photosystems or whatever. We call this an excited electron because it has energy. Where did it get the energy from? From the sun, okay? It combines with another hydrogen and makes this molecule called NADPH. Now, NADPH also has energy. Not as much as the ATP, but it has energy too, okay? So what happened in these light reactions? We absorbed sunlight in the photosystems through the chloroplasts, okay? We got the energy from these electrons to pump the hydrogens to make ATP, which is energy, and also an NADPH, which is energy, okay? And those two things are used for the light-independent reactions, which is the Calvin cycle. Okay, so the whole point of the light-dependent reactions is to make energy, which will be used later to make sugar. Okay, now so here's a question that you have to ask. Well, where did this electron come from in the first place? Okay, the one that got the energy, and we say it's excited. It came from a water molecule. So this water molecule split apart, and when it did, it released an electron, and that's what is gonna gain that energy from the sun, okay? When the water splits, it gives off some of those hydrogen ions that we talked about, but it also gives off oxygen, which was one of our byproducts of photosynthesis. Remember, plants produce oxygen. Well, where does it come from? It comes from splitting the water molecule in order to get that electron so that this whole process can take place. So there's our oxygen. So if you go back to your overview summary equation, okay, sunlight plus 6 CO2, we'll get to that in a minute. Where did the water come from? Well, it comes from the soil when a plant absorbs water. And what's one of the byproducts? Oxygen. So it's right there in our summary equation. So the light-independent reactions are going to cover how the carbon dioxide gets converted into the sugar, okay? And that happens over in the stroma in just a minute once all this is over.